After our rather epic Montana ghost town hunting trip and Yellowstone trip, we set out for Central Oregon and camped out at Ukiah Dale Campground. And on the next day, we headed west and stopped for coffee in Heppner, Oregon, which is about 50 miles south of the interstate. It had a dam break and was flooded in 1903, and a lot of buildings lost, I think all but two. But it's got really a kind of a neat historic downtown area and is known for, I guess, by foodies. We then got up into the hills and the agricultural area, stopped for lunch in Condon, Oregon, and then headed our way west and stopped in Mayville. Now, Mayville actually at one time was competing, I think, for the county seat. It had all kinds of buildings. It was doing really well, hotel, everything else, and this Oddfellows building here that I'm peeking in now. Some of the buildings burned down. I think Condon took over, and Mayville fell to ruin and really became a partial ghost town. And I would say that most Oregon ghost towns that we've seen so far are what I would call partial ghost towns, because there are people living in or around them, with the exception of, I think, Bodie was a true ghost town. We then were surprised by the John Day fossil beds. Kind of a neat area, and I wouldn't mind going back in a little cooler weather to do some hiking through there. After that, we got into some windy roads and ran into a Porsche club coming out of probably Portland. There must have been 20 Porsches racing down the road past us, all doing the speed limit, I'm sure. Would have been a fun drive in a sports car, though, and I used to get into sports cars, so that definitely would be a fun drive. Eventually, we did make it to Shaniko. Shaniko at one time had over 20,000 people and was called the wool capital of the world, but I think there was like only 24 or 25 total residents now. So it's kind of another one of these partial ghost towns. A neat little town, got a little coffee, a little ice cream shop there, and a few other businesses. Some were open, some weren't. Neat place to visit, but not much of a ghost town. Then we hit the Blue Mountain Scenic Byway the next day and headed towards Granite. And I will tell you that the Blue Mountain Scenic Byway is a beautiful drive, absolutely beautiful drive. It is paved between Ukiah and Granite and Sumter. Absolutely gorgeous drive, absolutely worth getting out there if you're an overlander. There are some really neat places out there, great campgrounds that are right off the road, and you can get to them fairly quickly and then go and explore the side roads, the dirt roads, the valleys and mountains and that sort of thing. So an absolutely beautiful area that I think I'd like to get back to someday without the camper and just take the Jeep and the rooftop tent, which we were using as a guest bedroom on this trip. Once we got past we did the 53 miles between Ukiah and Granite. We actually ran into an old stamp mill, and it was kind of fun to go and explore it a little bit. We didn't get too deep into it. We didn't go inside at all. We just kind of wandered around outside and looked at the ruins themselves and speculated of what they did and when they were doing it. And there was a sign just up the highway a little bit, maybe 150 yards or so, talking about another stamp mill 3.5 miles to the south, and I'm sure it'd be fun to hike back there and go find it. But we kind of hiked around, looked at some different things, and then crossed back over the creeks. As you can see, neat little bubbling creeks that I couldn't help thinking there's probably gold in there. When we got back to the Jeep, we made the next 3 miles down the road and ran into an area where there were 16 acres of rock piles that Chinese gold miners had moved to get to the remnants of previous miners' work and find gold there. Granite wasn't much to see, and so we headed to Baker. We did stop in Sumter on the way through and got fuel, and then went on to Baker, and then from Baker we got to this interpretive site where there are a bunch of covered wagons, and it was pretty cool. Plus you had a neat view of the valley below and Lone Tree, which was part of the Oregon Trail. Then once we left there, we got on the Hells Canyon Highway, made our way to Richland and Halfway, and finally onto the road to Cornucopia, which was a 4-mile dirt road that easy drive, anybody can do it. But it leads to Cornucopia, which is one of Oregon's quote-unquote ghost towns, though we did find obvious signs of people living in cabins and things in the area. So in the town of Cornucopia, there are actually residents with private property signs. But we were able to check out this old building. I'm really not sure what it was. It could have been an old union hall or something of that nature, possibly a hotel, but I don't think so. And I'll look it up and maybe put something in the comments for you. But it was kind of neat, and inside the wood was in really great shape. And as a sawyer that runs a portable sawmill, I have to admit that I was pretty impressed with the lumber itself, but the very fact that when you look inside, as you'll see here in a minute, that wood is still in great shape. And this building's going to fall down, so I hope someone goes in, and before the building just falls over and collapses into dust, someone rescues this beautiful interior paneling. I did take a step inside. I'll be honest, I don't recommend it for anybody else. I don't recommend it for myself anymore. I took a step inside and the whole building seemed to move a little bit. And so I kind of quickly poked around a little bit, shot a little video to kind of see what it looked like, and then backed my way out safely before things got a little crazy. But it was a neat little visit to Cornucopia. Then we got back to the Jeep and headed back to Ukiah Campground for the night, but not without taking a little video of the ride out, just to kind of show you the road. It would be pretty sketchy in the wintertime and several feet of snow. In fact, some local lodge managers up there told us that they had something like 11 feet of snow, and they used a Chevy Suburban with tracks instead of tires to get in and out during the winter. So I was thinking to myself, I sure wouldn't want to drive that road even in 2 feet of snow, even with a good vehicle, because it definitely, it's not a big drop. You know, you've got 50, 60 feet, maybe sometimes a bit more than that, like you can see here. But it's enough that I certainly wouldn't want to drive off it in the snow, and no one's going to find you anyway. But it was a fun drive, and I would say the little towns were pretty cool. Halfway, Richland, Sumter was a great town. I wouldn't recommend Granite. We're told by the locals that they still have gunfights in Granite, so it might not be a place for someone to visit who's not interested in having a gunfight. But it's a lot of private property, so not much to see there. You will run into these stoplights sometimes out in the middle of nowhere in the Northwest. This is the third one I've seen in the last few years. There's no flaggers. They just have the light up, let you know they're working on the road. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know what you think in the comments, and hit subscribe if you'd like to see more.